Thank you for joining us this morning while we discuss our platform, USGovCert. Before we get started, I want to announce that this session is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube platform and other social media sites. Put your put your questions in the chat. Uh, Again, good morning. My name is Philip Denny. I am president of USGovCert. USGovCert is a purpose-built platform to help um, uh, companies, appraisal companies, who have decided to undergo the certification journey. I've been a federal government contractor for over 20 years. My customers have been both DoD agencies and civilian agencies in the federal government. I've been both a prime contractor and a subcontractor to some large prime contractors. Um, I'm experienced as a healthcare expert in life sciences. Obviously, cybersecurity is one of the expertise that our companies sells to other companies. With me today is Amit Pan. Amit is a seasoned expert in certifications and across several certifications. I'm going to let Amit in a little while give you a better and more detailed explanation of his expertise. Um, um, you can go to the next slide. Uh, our platform allows companies to manage um, their certification journey across several standards. Those are some ISO standards, the CMMI standard, NIST standard, and the new standard that was recently released by the Department of Defense, the CMMC standard. One of the things that as a small business, that I found difficult to do was to dedicate the time towards the effort to certify when I did not necessarily perceive that certification was an effort that would bring profit to the company. That, by the way, is a misguided view. Uh, Certification is extremely critical to helping a small business understand its internal processes, understand what it needs to do to accomplish those things that are critical to their customers, such as making sure that your product is a quality product. Um, but one of the major issues that I faced was dedicating the time that is required to do all the things, all those tasks that are required to become certified. So what we thought we would do is to give you kind of an overview as to what effort is entailed in becoming certified. Um, so over the next two webinars, we're going to talk about the certification journey. There's enough material in here for more than one presentation, so we've decided to divide it into two sessions. The first session, we're going to talk about certification journey for an ISO when you're pursuing an ISO certification, and when you're pursuing a CMMI certification. Next week, we will talk about, or our next session, we are going to talk about the certification journey that is involved with pursuing NIST 800 certification and the CMMC certification, at least CMMC level 1 and part of level 2. The similarities between this and these are obvious, but one of the other similarities is that there's they're both what are considered self-certifying. Um, so, how can US Gov Cert help you on that certification journey? Now, um, our platform is if you can go to the next slide, uh, our platform has built into it um, several capabilities that can help you on your certification journey. But for right now, um, What we want to talk about is um, um, how you can help yourself, help your company go through the certification journey. Now, again, I jokingly say that certification helps you make money. Um, that's not intuitively obvious. Um, uh, Certification for most businesses is seen as an expense. Most small businesses is seen as an expense, not a profit center. But certification really is a profit center if you think about it a little broader. Um, you can't get on many contract vehicles nowadays unless you have uh, certification standards that the government requires. Prime contractors are demanding that you become certified. So really, thinking about it from that perspective, it is really more money making. It is a money making opportunity. Um, so within the company, even a small company, there are many projects that are going on simultaneously. Um, if you are planning to take this certification journey, we recommend that you isolate maybe one or two projects um, that are relatively straightforward that you can build your team around and um, use that as your project for your certification. Um, what you need to do is to identify your core team. That's going to be the administrator. That's going to be the contributors. That's going to be the subject matter experts in your organization. Um, Identify an administrator as the single point of contact for all questions related to certification. And by the way, we are here to help you answer any questions that you might have. We have there's a help desk available for you that you could ask questions. Are chat features. You can email us or or you can call us. What we are endeavoring to help you do is to stay focused on that one or two projects that you have identified um, for becoming certified. Now, in terms of getting training early, um, there is a um, um, it is important that you focus on training early in the process because the process can take a few months. Uh, One of the other things that you need to do early is to engage a qualified consultant, and our tool has lists of qualified consultants that you can select, or you can bring your own. You can bring your own consultant uh, uh, to this tool to help you in your journey. By the way, um, also engaging with your auditor and appraiser early is critical to you. Um, I'm going to introduce, I'm going to let Amit come in right now, and he can probably expand upon these. First of all, introduce who he is, and then expand upon some of these enablers that we think are important to your certification journey. Amit?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. And well, yeah, a little bit brief about myself. I'm a process implementation consultant, process auditor, I'm appraiser with CMMI, I'm Six Sigma trainer. So uh, my core interests are predominantly around process implementation, process definitions, and process improvements, as well as very actively involved in software delivery management. So yeah, some of these interesting points Philip mentioned, I would just maybe expand a little bit on one or two of these, especially right scoping. So right scoping, it's not just minimal scoping that we are talking here. We are talking about scoping it right for your business. What are your business objectives? Which business division or group of projects or group of activities you look at as the real growth engine for you in the coming years? So invest in that, identify those areas as your scope. first go ahead and implement your processes on that particular part of your business and then slowly expand it to cover the business as a whole. Training early, extremely important because until you yourself or your team does not know what the standard in question or the model in question is all about, your ability to implement it quickly becomes very, very limited. Uh, consultant Consultants being qualified and knowledgeable is extremely important. That's where either knowing somebody by word of mouth or going through some mature systems to locate the right consultant, as Philip was mentioning, that the system has some list of consultants. This could be helpful, definitely. If you engage with your auditors and appraisers early in the life cycle, what happens is they also come in and do their own dipstick checks or detailed pre-checks, depending on the type of standard or model you are implementing, and they are able to help you course correct by giving you early actions, identifying your gaps. Last point, which we see on this slide, extremely important. Don't take any certification, whether ISO, CMMI, or any other certification, as a one-time affair, because almost every one of these um, you have to repeat after a certain period of time, and you don't want to be in this boat that you spent so much money, so much energy and time, implemented your processes, and then you let everything go. Things fall apart, and uh, your certification's validity is expiring, and then your journey starts from ground zero, and you end up investing again similar or more time, effort, and money on this initiative. So these are some of the things that are extremely important for you to be on the right path for implementation. And as we are going to see now on the next slide, how a typical advisory roadmap on CMMI looks like. So for any standard or model for that matter, it's not mandatory that you engage a consultant. Majority of organizations do. One, because they themselves don't have the process expertise on that particular model. Secondly, uh, consultants typically bring with them loads of wealth of knowledge and information from across different organizations in a particular domain. So, but if you decide to engage a consultant or an advisor for you, insist that they do a gap assessment for you, and um, they tell you upfront what are your what is your current state of implementation and what are the gaps looking like, and get a proper report from them, so that through that report you can really know where you are, and you can also build a roadmap as to where you would want to be and how much time it would take. So, and that would lead you to the process enhancement part, wherein you would start to refine your processes, fix the gaps, implement those processes in your scope of projects or functions that you decided early on. And the consultant or consulting organization that you have tied up with, they would typically be there with you. They will keep on providing you necessary advisory to fix those gaps, to give you some samples, examples, help in reviews, um, sometimes even help you in training as part of building readiness. But ultimately, it is your own endeavor and responsibility to train your people on the new processes that you have defined. Keep on reviewing those. Remember, it's your process, not consultant or consulting organization's process. So you have to ultimately take ownership of starting to take charge of reviewing the implementations in your projects, uh, and then start to work with your lead appraiser to identify the appraisal scope. At the same time, consultant would keep on clarifying your implementation questions, and ongoing basis, both your team as well as the consultant would keep on doing implementation reviews, how the implementation is proceeding, how are the gaps, having action plan to close those gaps. So this is an iterative cycle, and many times people ask me how much time it takes. Well, there is no definitive answer to that. It depends on what's the state of your current processes, how much gap is there, how big is your implementation core team? What's the agility through which you can implement? How much focus you are putting on it? So there are multiple variables. So, but the key is having a clear plan of action and remaining focused. Once things seem good for you, you are looking in decent good shape, at least in your opinion, then uh, you should be in close contact with the appraiser you have identified and go for the CMMI appraisal. And we are going to look at how that flow looks like. Uh, Typically, uh, any appraisal or audit, it's again like a mini project. So there also both you as well as your appraiser need to understand, agree on what are the requirements for this appraisal. So set up the appraisal objectives, how are we going to collect the data for the appraisal, what inputs, what outputs are going to be, and various other factors like timelines and the things. So that plan gets built. Uh, what can go wrong during the appraisal? We need to think of that, identify those key risks, and very important part in CMMI appraisal. CMMI appraisal is not just done by one individual. So you have to note that there's a team which conducts the appraisal, and this team is having multiple members. The team size is including the appraiser, the minimum team size is 4 and can go on till 6, 7, uh, depending on how big your organization is. And uh, the team members who support the lead appraiser in conduct of the appraisal could be internal to your organization or could be external or a combination of both. There are certain guidelines and rules to select those team members, which your appraiser would be able to tell you upfront when you're planning for it. But it is always good to get your own people trained. I would always recommend any organization to go through the official training on CMMI. There are some trainings listed here, depending on what is your scope and which CMMI views you have taken in scope. A couple of examples are here. If you have taken up development or services views in scope, then there's foundation course, then there are 1-day courses on each view of CMMI model, as well as the appraisal team training for the members. Uh, and then your lead appraiser would be conducting the readiness assessments or the readiness reviews, so that uh, leading up to the appraisal, we know where we are and are we really on the right path. There would be readiness review reports given. Uh, I always would recommend anybody, unless there is a constraint on travel or right now in the post-COVID world, things have become very different, to have readiness reviews on site with the team. And then finally, the appraisal happens. Appraisals could be quite extensive and exhaustive affair, timelines 1 week to 1.5, 2 weeks. It depends on, again, how big the scope is and what CMI level you're targeting. And finally, um, the findings would be presented to you and a report would be submitted to ISACA. This is how typical CMI appraisal flow looks like. And now we'll quickly look at the ISO flow. So ISO, again, gap assessment part remains same, that you can see the blue box on the left side. Building readiness, more or less it would be same. Again, your consultant will be closely engaged with you, and depending on which ISO standard you are implementing, whether it is information security 27001 or quality management 9001 or a combination of multiple, your implementation timeline and activities would be differing. In ISO, we have a mechanism in which we say the first audit done by the auditor as a stage one audit. Stage one audit, extensively, the auditors go through the documentation or the records of implementation, and they would give their observations, and you have to work with your consultant to or yourself to fix those observations and then fix up your stage two or the certification audit dates. If everything goes well in certification audit, we will get an audit report and hopefully a certificate of successfully completing the audit. If there are issues and there are non-conformances, especially major non-conformances, there could be follow-up audits, uh, or even the audit could be declared a failure. Well, that is applicable even for CMI appraisal. There also we have action plan reappraisal concept. And the one thing unique in your ISO certification journey is that annual basis, at least annual basis. Some organization do it 6 months also. There would be surveillance audits done by the same auditor or the same auditing uh, body, um, so that continued implementation of processes and focus on improvements to those is periodically being examined. So every year there would be an audit. Both CMMI appraisal and ISO certifications are typically valid for 3 years. Uh, there are some variations in CMMI, but yeah, most of the CMMI appraisals of the benchmark type, they are valid for 3 years. And all ISO audits are valid for 3 years, subject to the annual surveillances being successfully completed by the organization. Um, how to fast track these? Well, remember the previous slide. Uh, start early, have focus, small baby steps at a time, have your scope clearly established, identify your consultant early, right consultant, don't just uh, go buy fancy websites or fancy brochures, try to judge the knowledge level of your consultant, engage with your auditors and appraisers early. So that those will be some of the actions that you can take. And of course, any external guidance in terms of samples or any base process documentation that you can refer to and then customize is always helpful. So those are some of the ways you can fast track, but not by cutting any corners. So I'll hand it over to Philip, and maybe he can conclude by going over the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Amit. So before I start, you have done many. Um, you have helped many companies in North America and also Asia go through the certification process. Um, for a small, let's say a small federal government contractor, what's been the typical time frame? I know that they may not be a typical, but what have you seen is the typical length of time from start to finish for a small government contractor?
See, again, for example, if I have to take CMMI as an example, and CMMI also, we have to see what's the target level. If is an
Uh-huh.
organization targeting level 2 or level 3? Are they targeting only development view of the model, or are they targeting service view of the model? See, in any case,
Hmm.
if an organization comes to me and says, hey, we have a contract submission due and we have to complete our CMMI appraisal in 2 months' time. Can you do it? I'll say, sir, thank you so much. Uh, Not doable. So it does take time. I would anybody going for a meaningful implementation at a level 3, I would uh, tell them to give themselves a time of an year at least. Uh, and if your implementation is more complex in terms of multiple views or multiple locations or multiple divisions, then it could be again extended. But again, I don't say that an organization cannot do it less than a year time. There are organizations whose processes are so mature. They have been doing everything all right without knowing that they are following processes that meet the intent of CMMI practices. So if your processes are already well established, uh, the people know about them, you are implementing them rightfully, and the timelines could get shrunk. So it
Great.
all depends on the first checkpoint that we do
Okay.
and see what's the state of affair of implementation. And again, as they say, work fills available time. And I try to tell this to again a lot of my customers that uh, when you build your plans, um, if you if you say that I'll finish something in 2 months, I see a tendency that okay, these definitions, if you are saying that okay, base process definitions, stay initial ones I'll finish in 2 months, the work does not start for first 1.5 months. So people are busy in their own other activities, and then suddenly everybody starts to wake up and they would scamper saying, "Oh, we committed something to be delivered at the end of 2 months." So that's a concept. So if you can be upfront and really invest time early, and maybe then that initial 2 month period that you set for yourself for the first cut of some of the process documentation that you wanted to share with your consultant or the appraiser, um, that can be reduced by half. But it depends on how much you are working, Philip. Uh,
Sure.
and how big and knowledgeable your team is.
Okay. Okay. Good. So, one more question before I wrap it up. What have you seen has been the typical shortcomings? When an organization sets an aggressive time to complete the certification, um, w- how have they fallen down? Is it not the availability of their subject matter experts, or what has been your experience?
Ownership.
Okay.
Single point of ownership, I found that becomes one of the biggest impediment.
Okay.
So you are taking up a huge initiative. It's like a big, fast-paced project for you,
Hmm.
but you expect your existing team to double up and run with it
Hmm.
without anybody having direct or sole or single ownership of it.
Okay.
And then it is okay, this is not just my initiative, it is his or hers also. And then he will do it, she will do it kind of approach starts to happen because I'm being
Okay.
judged on my other work delivery. I'm
Yes.
not just solely being judged on the effectiveness or the pace of process implementation that I drive in the organization. So I always tell people, "Hey, you have to have somebody directly responsible whose KRA is to ensure that right processes are defined and set up and established and followed in the organization."
Okay. It's great. Great. So as we come to the end here, I want to reiterate a couple of things that we may have touched upon before. Let's take, for example, what this platform is. It is a platform that simplifies the process of, I can read this, a platform that simplifies the process of self certification for small businesses. Well, or medium-sized businesses. Large businesses tend to have dedicated departments or divisions who's responsible for quality or certification or what have you. But for the vast majority of firms in the marketplace, this tool has what you need to pursue certification. And we have done what we have done is to price it very aggressively and make this the subscription available via cloud. We are hosted in Amazon Gov Cloud, um, an extremely secured platform. You can purchase just one standard. You can purchase multiple standards, and many organizations do purchase multiple standards. For example, an organization might have an ISO 9001 standard. It might have CMMC on, and if you're going to do business in the for the Department of Defense, you must have, I believe by next by first quarter, second quarter, 2025, you must have CMMC certification. So these certifications are coming fast and furious, and in some cases they're mandatory. One of the things that most small businesses are going to do, and we touched upon this, both myself and Amit, is that uh, you don't have the internal expertise to go through this process. So most businesses will bring in a consultant, someone whose lifeblood is understanding processes and helping businesses such as yours um, refine their processes and manage their processes for effective operations. Um, we this tool really was built for small mid-sized businesses, specifically to help you um, expedite your certification. So we do that through through training, through having tools available, through having sample templates that have been built from the experience of many similar sized firms. So we are here to help you. Again, thank you for your time. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or you can reach out to us um, via email or telephone number if you have any questions whatsoever. And again, thank you for your time this morning. And we're going to pick up the second part of this series in our next webinar. So have a good rest of your day. Thank you.